Great. So I am Mandy Dunlap, and I'm the proud principal of Greenbrier Eastside Elementary. This is my 5th year here, and we are a model PLC school. So some of the things you're going to hear today correlate to all the work we do with PLC. So I hope you like my background that I chose for the slideshow. I was working on this during the snow, and I was ready for spring. So we're just going to go ahead and jump in. I do want this to kind of be interactive. So if there's anything, that you're wanting to kind of mention or talk about, I'm totally okay with you unmuting. You can also use the chat, but I'm not real good at keeping up with the chat. So Ms. Job can help me out with that. And we're just going to go ahead and get started. And I know there's several of y'all on here, and I appreciate you hopping on here in the afternoon. This time just worked better for me, so I could be in my building throughout the day. So it's first day back from snow, so it was a lot. Okay, so we're going to watch a quick video, and I want you to think about how this video would relate to culture at your school. And it's in a different language, so if you're hearing a different language, you don't really have to listen to what they're saying, just to be able to understand what it's about.
सर आपके लिए उस पार कार का इंतजाम किया है सर। चल चल
कुछ करो ना।
मैं वहां जाके क्या उखाड़ लूंगा।
कैसी जाने बूंदे आई, जाने कैसा दर्द लाई, सामने क्या है ये तेरे, क्यों रुका है तू बता दे। कौन तुझको पार लेगा, कौन होगा वो मसीहा, वो जिसे तू ढूंढता है वो ही है तू वही है। तुझ में तेरा रास्ता है, तुझ में तेरा है सहारा, तू ही तुझको पार लेगा, तू ही है तेरा किनारा। तुझ में तेरा रास्ता है, तुझ में तेरा है सहारा, तू ही तुझको पार लेगा, तू ही है तेरा किनारा।
Okay, so if y'all will type in the chat real quick, anything that stood out to you about that video and how that correlates to culture in your school. Or if you would rather unmute, we're a small group, that's totally fine as well. Okay, so even those reluctant joined in, absolutely. And a little child was leading right from the very get-go, which to me, power of a team, absolutely, Aaron, I agree with you there. And I just love, at the first, they all were just looking at the problem. So you can think about any problem in your school, and we kind of get fixated on that, but we don't think about we're part of the solution. So we're going to talk about being part of the solution today. And this is kind of our agenda. I built a lot of slides. We probably won't get to all this today, which is totally fine, but we're gonna make sure everybody understands culture versus climate because it is different. We're gonna talk about that change is inevitable with the PLC process and what that means for your culture. Being a consistent leader is very important in this process. So I'm going to spend some time discussing that. And then I can't get on here and talk about culture without talking about celebrating, right? So we're going to talk about that too. And then I have a bonus item if you stay till the very end. And this is just something totally not culture, but it has like made my whole life so much easier as a principal. So I'm sharing it with y'all today because y'all hopped on and you're going to be on here for an hour. So here we go. Culture versus climate. Now, here is the iceberg, right? And what we see on the top, that's kind of the climate of the school. So you can think about that as the group's attitude. It can be felt kind of when you enter the room. It's flexible from day to day. And it's the way we feel around here, right? So whenever you talk about how we feel, that's climate. And I put an example is Sonic drinks, right? So when you go get your teacher's Sonic drinks, man, everybody feels good, right? But that doesn't mean you have a good culture. Same thing for, we have businesses drop stuff off here, very often. And man, that feels good to get a little treat, but that's not culture, okay? So culture is all about the personality of the group. And that can be felt by the group. Everybody's working towards a common goal. It doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. So if you're here for a quick fix, that's not what we're getting, right? But it becomes the way things are done around here. Like this is just how we do things. And my example for that is data notebooks. And that's something that was not built overnight at Eastside. But now every kid K through 5 has a data notebook and they know how to use it. And they can tell you about all their data. So that's part of culture, okay? And y'all just feel free if you got a question, put it in the chat and I'll for sure address those for y'all. All right, so culture defined, if you've heard anything with solution tree, you've probably heard this before, but we have an unwavering belief in the ability of all students to achieve success. And then we pass that belief on to others in overt and covert ways. We even create policies and procedures and adopt practices that support that belief of the ability of every student, okay? So that is the textbook definition. Now, we're gonna have a little fun and I hope y'all are ready to have a little fun because I came up with this and I thought, oh, this would be so fun to do, okay? So I have 4 songs and they're little clips we're gonna play and you're gonna decide from your school culture which of those kind of sums up your current culture, okay? So knowing your current reality is huge. So you never want to paint a picture that's not true, because if you're trying to kind of go, oh yeah, man, that's us, but if it's really not, right? You want to know where you currently are, okay? So in some of these songs, you're going to laugh, but all of them speak to a different type of culture, okay? So we're just going to sit back and enjoy for, they're about a minute a piece. So there's your first option. Let me see if it'll let me. Okay, so here's our next one. All right, so there's your second option. Here's our next one.
Yeah. Who let the dogs out?
that one's pretty quick. So that might be an option for your culture currently. All right, and here's our last one, might be an option. If you will, join in the fun here, type in the chat which of those songs kind of spoke to your culture, and just, just be honest. So someone works in several buildings, so they get to see all of these. That's fun. Okay. Imagine, Aaron says. Okay. Absolutely. Miss Job can see both all spectrums of this. All right. And I will be honest, like 5 years ago, it for sure was Who Let the Dogs Out, right? Like we were trying to figure out what is happening, right? But now for sure it's a toss-up between Imagine and We're the Champions, because we're still doing lots of dreaming and building ideas for later, but we have made such great growth that we for sure are proud of the work here. All right, so I hope y'all liked that. I thought that would be fun. Okay, here we go. Now, we're going to switch gears and talk about, oh, Stephanie's hopping on here. A mix of all of it. It comes in waves for sure, right? The snow day, if y'all were like us, we were here on Wednesday in 2 hours. We had to get it all together and get them back on the buses, and it was a lot, right? But the team pulled together, made it happen. Okay, so we're going to talk about change with the PLC process and just as a building. Now you've probably seen this graphic, and every time I look at it, I love it more and more, right? So who wants change? Oh man, we all do, right? Yeah, bring it on, right? And then you say, who wants to change, right? And then who will lead this, right? So if you're on here today, congrats, right? Because your picture would be there. You would be leading the change. So if you're familiar, which I'm sure you are, there's 4 pillars of the PLC culture. And I just wanted to show you examples from Eastside of those 4 pillars, because they do drive every piece of work that we do. So if you do not have these 4 pillars in place, that's going to be step 1 for you, to make sure as a building, y'all know where you're headed with your mission, vision, and you're going to hear values, and some things you're going to read, it's collective commitments. They're the same thing. Eastside, we call them collective commitments, and then goals. Okay. All right. So here is our mission and vision. So I'll let you take a look at that. And we actually wrote the vision about 4 years ago. And if you know anything about the mission vision process, the vision should take you about 5 years into the future. So there's just a couple of things in our vision we have not conquered yet. And part of that is COVID related, like that working in partnership with the community. We do some things, but a lot of the things we had in mind are just not getting to happen yet. But we're getting pretty close to having to write a new vision, which is exciting, because we get to project 5 more years into the future. So there is our mission and vision. These are the staff commitments. And this is not, if you haven't done this yet, this is not a one-day process. Man, we're just going to crank these out and be finished. It actually took us at Eastside 1.5 years to write those, because we wanted the entire building on the same page of what those meant. And so there was a lot of back and forth discussion and making sure we all understood what they meant before we said these are our commitments. And then here recently, and I'll let y'all read those if you need to. The celebration one, that last one on the end, is so very important. Commit to celebrating all success, large and small. So that's a big piece of what we do. And then there's quite a few of them, but we actually had the students this year develop student commitments. And of course, we've had those staff commitments for several years. And so this is our first year to have kids wrap their brain around this. So I actually have what's called a Panther Voice team. So it's made up of 1st through 5th graders. There's about 30 of them, and they are a blast. And we meet periodically and work on different things. Like one kid one day wanted to meet, like they come and talk to me if they want a meeting. And he wanted to meet on the choices of beverages in the cafeteria, right? So like we had a meeting, we type up an email, send it to our nutrition director, so she would know kind of what the kids, now some of the things they wanted, right, of course we couldn't do, but she is looking into other options for us because they spurred that idea. But these were the commitments they came up with. And they were very thoughtful in putting these together. Like if you notice the first one, they didn't say we will be at school every day. And they didn't have the word strive. I kind of had to help them with that. But they basically told me, they said, Miss Dunlap, it's really not our fault sometimes we don't get to school. Right? Very true. Okay. So they made sure everything on here was what they wanted and what they understood. I love that they added healthy choices on here. And they said, and not just for like what we eat, but like what we're thinking about. I'm like, this is great, right? So if you ask kids, they have a lot of information to share with you to kind of keep getting all these things rolling. Somebody said, yeah, they love the student voice in younger grades. We've never done 1st grade before until this year. My student voice team normally is 2nd through 5th, but I have some really dynamic leaders in 1st grade. So we said, sure, we'll take them on. And one of them, she actually worked on, I didn't even ask her to, but she worked on a project over the snow break for us that she thought we needed. And she emailed it to me, right? So, so once you start empowering kids, it just kind of takes off because they go in directions that you don't even think about, but you need to go in different directions of what they're, because it is their school. You want to make sure that they understand that. Okay, and then we're going to talk about goal setting. Now, when I first tried to understand goal setting, I did it wrong. Okay, so every time I present on goal setting, I want to make sure the people listening get it right. Okay, so I used to think if we have building-wide goals, we're good. But that's just one piece, right? So grade level goals, so all that with the CFAs that you create as a team, they need goals for those, right? And then student driven down to the student goals, which that goes with our data notebooks. So I will show you an example real quick. So these are a couple of our building wide goals. So these are for this school year. These are the 2 on reading. Then we have 2 more on math for K2 and then 3-5. We have a 3-5 science goal. And then this year we actually made a social emotional goal. Just because of everything we were seeing, we knew we needed more focus on that, which I'm sure y'all all did. And then our goal scores out to the side. So that actually, we took basically what we performed at last year. So like last year on K2 MAP, we take NWEA MAP, they scored 87% in kindergarten. So we had to say, okay, 10% more would be 97. So that's how we came up with our goal scores. And then periodically through the year, we look at where we are comparing to that and what we still have left to go. Okay, and then here's just some examples of building wide goals. So this is our kinder team with one of their retailing goals, and it was for 80% and they got 97, right? So those kids are really excited about that. And this is Miss Martinez over here on the side. And we chart all of our essential standards, how we did on those with our CFAs. So she charted one, but we didn't get to 100%. So she went back and did interventions, reassessed, and she got 96%, right? So that was earlier in the fall. So that was one example I had to share with y'all of just that constant process of making sure all kids, right? That's what we're after. So we're after that 100% every time. Okay. All right, and then this is your student level goals. So this right here, it could be a presentation in itself, okay? But the poster at the top is the East Side Reflection Wheel. And this was made by our staff. They saw something really quick one day on a video we watched at Back to School PD, and they loved it so much, they said, we have to make that. So they made it, and basically, if you're in the red zone, you still have lots of questions about it. If you're all the way on the other side to the dark green, you can actually teach it to your peers. So we had a teacher that made a bulletin board in her room of the wheel, and then every kid has a different little avatar picture that they've picked, and no one else in the classroom knows who is the different ones. So it's kind of anonymous for the whole group. But so like before, so like this one, before the teacher taught figurative language, she had them place where they would be on that, on the reflection wheel. And then after several days of the lesson, they got to move their avatar. And I don't have a picture of that, but most of them were in light green or dark green. So it's just a really cool way for kids to assess where they are and kind of see where they need to go in their learning. And then the other picture we have is the student data binder. So that's what that little guy's name is, Miles. So he's sharing with his family and the classroom teacher there all his progress. So we do student-led conferences here at Eastside. And it used to be, prior to our student data notebooks, student-led conferences were a lot of work because we had to like prep kids how to talk to their parents and all that. Now with the student data notebooks, because the kids use those so frequently, it's really no prep work because the kids know exactly what they need to tell their parents and what they've still got to work on and all their goals that are in there. So that is a big piece. So do y'all have any questions so far about what you're seeing or any comments? This is my last slide on the student data notebook. So if you're wanting to see something up close, that is a kindergartner there on the left, and then a second grader there on the right, and they're just coloring in their data. So if y'all have any questions, you can type those in the chat. That's just on the 4 pillars, just a little bit, a glimpse of the work we do. All right, I will move on. So consistent leadership, okay? This is huge because if kids constantly have to get used to a new admin, teachers constantly have to get to a new admin, a lot of things that one principal might start might not get finished, right? So there's a lot that could happen there. So just making sure that that's all consistent is really, really important. And I hope y'all want to do this. So I made a little Padlet. So you can scan your phone and it will take you to the Padlet. And I'll wait till y'all all do that before I jump on the Padlet myself. Okay, so there are a couple of different quotes, and I love quotes just in general, okay? But I would love for y'all to add a comment under one of them or more than one, just about something that stood out to you from that quote or why that kind of rings true to you this year in whatever phase you're in as a principal. Okay, so someone says inspect what you expect on the leadership is an action, not a position. Someone says finding potential in people and has the courage to develop it. This is the work of educators. Love it. Yes. I love the one that daring leaders are never silent about hard things, because sometimes there are issues you have to confront and resistance, and we can't be quiet about that. So that's always something you really need to focus on. And Michael Jordan's quote there, earn your leadership every day. I just, that one's great. Yeah, being able to have difficult conversations is so important. Great. Anyone can lead. You don't have to have the title. Yeah, I agree with that. And I will give a little plug for Padlet. So over the snow break, we are doing a read as one. So we have one book that the entire school's reading, and we're currently reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so over the snow break, I made a Padlet for the kids. We've read through chapter 5, and every kid has a copy of that book at home. So I went ahead and made a Padlet for kids just to hop on and answer some questions about the chapters. And I really didn't think many kids would hop on, but we had great participation. So if you ever kind of just get stranded at home for a while, they like Padlet, and they're gonna add their own little images, and it's gonna be way better than you ever thought it would be. So it's a really cool thing to try out. Okay, so we're gonna hop back on over, and we are gonna watch. Now, I could say a lot of things, but I could in no way do it better than Mr. Rick DeFore. So we're gonna watch a video, and I'm hoping it's gonna let us do this. I may have to sign in real quick. Okay, so it's about 6.5 minutes. So we're gonna watch this and kind of take all of this information in, because he is a very effective speaker.
But we also recognize that there are still a lot of nitty-gritty issues that we have to face if we're going to help people make the transition from traditional schools to PLCs. And one of the things that we have to look at is, well, if I went into a PLC, what kind of culture would I see? For example, would I see that here is a school that demands adherence to certain core principles? Or would I see a school that encourages a lot of individual teacher autonomy? Would I see a place with strong and assertive administrative leadership? Or would I see a place that has empowered teachers all throughout the building? Would I see a place that recognizes and celebrates the current efforts and achievement of the school? Or a place that was perpetually discontent with the status quo? We still have room to grow. We still are not reaching all kids. And would we approach improvement in this school with a sense of urgency, we need to get going? Or would we recognize that substantive change takes patience, and we're in this for the long haul? Let's just focus on that second one for a minute. What kind of school culture do you think you would see? Would you see a culture in which we see a strong, assertive, effective administrative leadership in the building? Or would you see a culture in which teachers are empowered to make very important decisions? What do you think? Let's just do a quick vote. How many of you think in order for a traditional school to become a high-performing PLC, it will require strong and effective administrative leadership? How many of you say it's going to require empowered teachers? Well, many of you are voting twice. What's up with that? I'm from Chicago. I get voting twice. Vote early, vote often, right? No, you're right. I was trying to get you to fall victim to what Collins and Forrest have called the tyranny of or. And they said that this is the tyranny of or is characteristic of ineffective organizations. It's this rational view that can't easily accept paradox. Either we're going to have strong leaders or we're going to have empowered teachers. Either we're going to approach change with a sense of urgency or a sense that we have to sustain this over excuse me, over the long haul. What they found was that great organizations reject the tyranny of or, and instead they embrace the genius of and. Now, the genius of and is not a wishy-washy middle ground. We want kind of strong leaders and we want sort of empowered people. We want both at one and the same time. So how can you have a school that has both strong and effective leadership and empowered teachers? Well, one way might be to hire co-principals, one to be strong and assertive and one to be empowering and facilitating. But that would be very cost ineffective. So perhaps another way would be for a single principal to simply lay out a calendar. On Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, I am strong and assertive. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm empowering and facilitating, but that would just confuse people. So there is an answer to this dilemma. How can we have both? And it's, again, rejecting the tyranny of or, and instead we embrace the genius of and. The culture of a learning community is always, always, always a culture that is simultaneously loose and tight. Now, what this means is there are some things that are tight. They are non-discretionary. You must do this. If you don't do it, someone will confront you. It's sacred. We expect you to honor this. It is tight. This is who we are. This is what we do. On the other hand, within those few tight parameters, we encourage people to be innovative, creative, autonomous. We empower them to make very important and significant decisions. Now, we're going to try and show you all throughout this institute the few things we get tight about, but we're also going to try and show you how we empower people all throughout the organization. And we want you to leave here really crystal clear on this notion of a simultaneous loose and tight culture. To illustrate, let me begin by sharing a personal story that kind of reflects a loose and tight culture. And it comes from my personal experience as a first-year teacher. When I was a teacher in Batavia, Illinois, my very first year of teaching, I went to all of my colleagues and I said, what will the principal, Mr. Kellogg, look for when he comes in to evaluate me and evaluate my teaching? And I was so glad I asked, because no matter who I asked, I got the same answers. They said, well, first, make sure you have a good bulletin board. Because he put up new bulletin boards in all the classrooms 3 years ago. Nobody was using them. He got really mad at us, called a faculty meeting, yelled at us about bulletin boards. It will be the first thing he looks for when he walks in your room. And second, he hates it if you just lecture the kids for 15 minutes. You've got to engage them. You got to have a lot of interaction. The more interaction, the better. So everybody I asked, what's important to Mr. Kellogg, gave me the same answer: bulletin boards and student engagements, lots of activities with the kids. Everybody in that school knew that's what Mr. Kellogg was tight about. And if you didn't do it, it was going to show up in your evaluation. He would say something about it. So I was no fool. I worked out a deal with the kids. I gave massive extra credit for bulletin boards. You could go from an F to a B in my class if you put up a good bulletin board. So I had kids volunteering every week for bulletin board duty, and I had awesome bulletin boards. And then I said, if ever Mr. Kellogg comes into this room to watch me teach, if I ask a question and you know the answer, I want you to raise your right hand. If you don't know the answer, raise your left hand. Mr. Kellogg thought I was the greatest teacher since Socrates. He was telling all the other teachers, go watch that Dufour kid. He's incredible. Every time he asks a question, every hand in the room goes up. It doesn't matter who he calls on. They always get it right. I mean, this kid is... See, I knew what was tight with Mr. Kellogg, and it was bulletin boards and hands in the air, and that's what I gave him. That's what I delivered on. Unfortunately, he wasn't tight about the right things. So there are probably some things in your school that are tight, but we want to make sure that we get tight about the right things.
All right, so bulletin boards, there you go, guys. Who would have thought, right? Sometimes we do focus on some things that really don't matter, right? And the whole genius of and thing to me is so important in the work we do, because sometimes we get narrowed into one thing, but really we have to kind of broaden our horizons instead of saying or, say and. So y'all can for sure type in the chat anything that spoke to you from that video. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on. Now, Time for Change, if you have not read that book before, I get nothing for saying this, but that book is amazing. So if you've not read that before, you might put that on your list this summer to read. If you're like me, reading during the school year is hard, right? But in the summer, I can read a couple of books in the summer. Aaron says he also likes the concept of the and over or, and we don't have to settle. Absolutely. So this right here, it's all, and this is really a quick picture of the book. in what he talks about with system change. So first, you really have to make sure that you're communicating the why. So you will have a lot of teachers that will get on board once they understand why. Why do I have to do that, right? Why do we need to have essential standards, right? But if you can communicate the why, you're going to get a lot of people. Establishing trust with the who, right? So they have to trust you as a leader. So what that means is early on as a principal, if you're younger and you are starting out, if you say you're going to do something, you got to do it. So if you tell them, hey, I'm going to be in your room on this day to help you out with this activity, whatever it is, make sure you do that, right? Because you're establishing that trust. If they come to you to talk to you about something and they're asking you to keep that private, like do that, right? Keep that trust. So you're going to get some other people on the emotional side with just having trust. And then you begin to build capacity. Now, this is the piece that takes a while, right? Because you got to figure out how are we going to have all this system of change. And it has to be more than just you driving that ship. There's got to be a lot of leaders in the building. Your guiding coalition, some people call it a leadership team. So like when I hopped on here today at 3:30, my guiding coalition was meeting without me, right? Because they have things that they wanted to talk about. We always meet on Mondays. So they were doing that without me. And then return on investment. Now, this is the piece that when you read the book, it'll really make you think because if you've done all those other things and you've trained the teachers and you've equipped them with everything possible resources wise, there should be a return on your investment. So schools are not a business, but under this model, you could think about that if we put all these resources into this teacher, we should be producing results. And so anyway, that book, so good. If you've not read it, any of y'all read it, that would be cool if y'all wanted to comment on anything. Every time I pick it up, like I'm looking at mine over there on the shelf, like there are sticky notes all around it. And if I was to go back and read it again this summer, it would speak to me a whole new way just because of different things that I'm learning as being a principal. So. Okay, so hopefully you're up for one more video. So this is Ken Williams. He talks about the consistency of a leader. So tune in here and then you can type in the chat anything that stands out to you from this. So good. And it's about 4.5 minutes.
So how do you change and go from I to we? That's what this conference is about. In a professional learning community, I'm sure you didn't hear anything that was absolutely groundbreaking, cutting edge, or brand new. Every school's got pockets of excellence. Every school's got a team working like we say a school should work. Every school's got one. Every school's got teams that get together and collaborate, that come to consensus on the most important essential learning targets. Every school's got teams that are vulnerable with one another when they look at student data. Every school's got teams that have teachers who are willing to adjust their instructional practice, to look at assessment data through the lens of instructional practice. It absolutely takes strong leadership to make that consistent and pervasive and to become a culture. That's the goal, is for every team to operate with that paradigm. And that absolutely takes leadership. It doesn't necessarily take charismatic leadership. Jim Collins has shown us it doesn't take charismatic leadership. It takes consistent leadership and leaders who are willing to confront and help folks not opt out, help people learn together, and then help people not opt out. There's only one person in the building with the authority to direct behaviors. And I would contend that way too many of us as principals, and I suffered for the same thing for a while, we are more concerned with adult happiness than we are about student learning. And I've been there. I've been there. I'm a people pleaser. I think I have a decent sense of humor. I love people to be happy, and I want you to like me. And I want you to like me. But I had to let go of that when I realized that attitudes are way too visceral to try to change. I had to start focusing on behaviors. And when I start focusing on behaviors and directing behaviors, then that made some people not so happy. I couldn't worry about that. When I let go of your happiness being the most important thing in my life, things began to change in our culture. But it's a willingness to confront those issues, a willingness to support. You can't drop PLCs on your school like an anvil. We got to learn together. But once I believe you've got the learning and you see the supports I'm willing to put in place, it's time to go. I used to have my This is America talk every year. This is America, greatest country in the world. This is America. You get to choose. You know, there are places in the world you don't get to choose where you work. You get to choose where you work. This is America. My staff would walk in, I have a big old American flag on the first PowerPoints, and they go, oh, here we go. This is America speech. And I'd have a stack of transfer forms. Let me help you. Let me help you find a way. And I could hear the stuff. I cannot believe he had us transfer forms there. I mean, I put a bow on and everything. Everything's pretty on the table. I want to let me help you find the best place for you. Because here's where this bus is going. Right? We got to have those kinds of talks. But I spent a couple of years dancing around issues, pretending they didn't exist. Margaret Wheatley asked the question, what are we pretending not to know? That was me. Dancing around issues, sprinkling confectioner sugar on it, hoping it would taste better, sprinkling G Nate on it, hoping it smells better. And it doesn't change. All right. Oh, that's got me on my soapbox, about to run out of time. Here are a couple of empowering questions on how. So to answer that question, when a school embarks upon becoming a professional learning community, that's how the culture changes. Learning communities is all about culture. All about culture. It's how we work together. We're not telling you how to teach reading. We talk about how we work together, how to capitalize on the collective genius of teachers and support them through administration, through district, through staff personnel. How do we do that? How do we shift from teaching to learning? That's what learning communities is about, creating this kind of culture.
Okay, so I'm not saying anything about the transfer forms he was talking about. That was not the purpose of watching the video, but hopefully you got from what he was saying and the statement he put in there, and you can comment what your favorite thing was, but the one thing that I resonate with is he says, a lot of times we're worried about adult happiness over what's best for kids. And that's one thing that's very tight as far as my expectations, and the staff knows it. If we're going to make a decision, it's not going to be about what's easiest for adults. It's going to be what's best for kids. So like one example, we do interventions and extensions in the morning for a 40-minute block. And at the beginning of this, it was a nightmare because we had breakfast that had to happen and we needed these kids in intervention. And so at the beginning, a lot of kids were missing intervention because they needed breakfast. And so we could have easily said, man, that'd be a lot of work to do to-go breakfasts every morning, right? But that's now what we do. We have an amazing cafeteria staff that understood that was important. So we get to-go breakfast and they're taking breakfast in the classroom. Now, when it's syrup day, the teachers are going, oh, it's syrup day, right? But it's what's best for kids. They can eat and learn at the same time. So that is great. We've got a few things in the chat. Let's see. Students feel safer when they know the perimeters, so do staff. More people are happy because they know. That's very true. Yeah. Oh, Erin, sorry you got to leave. You can for sure watch for my next session and we'll pick up there. All right, so now I know you're probably thinking, okay, but what do we do about somebody that doesn't want to do all this, right? They don't want to hop on the positive culture bandwagon, okay? So there's a couple of different things that we have done at Eastside. So I'll speak to that experience. And then there's a lot that I'm not going into today. It'll probably be a different session on this series about this specifically, because there's a lot to it. So I always say that as the principal, I have to check the pulse of the building. And I kind of always have to kind of know, how's it going, right? How is everyone feeling with all these new things we're doing, or how's the week going? And that doesn't mean that I'm running around gossiping, right? You can just kind of, as a principal, you should probably shake your head if you agree with this one, right? But as a principal, you kind of know when things are a little off, right? People are short with each other and things just are not. It also speaks to climate, but it is part of the culture too. So we have done a couple of things. The picture up there of the sand. So it was my first year, and we were changing a lot of things because it was best for kids. And at the beginning of the year, man, like everybody was pumped, excited. We were all together. And then by about November, I knew I didn't have everybody behind me. And so I held a staff meeting, and I couldn't find sand, so I had salt, but I had someone pour salt in my hands. And I just said, at the beginning of the year, like we were all right here together. And then I opened my hands up and the salt fell through. And I said, and now kind of this is where we're at. And I said, so I need y'all to tell me what's wrong. And I said, you're not going to hurt my feelings. No one's going to get in trouble. I said, I had an anchor chart ready, and I gave someone just towards the front the marker. And I said, if you will write everything down. I did not leave the room. My assistant principal and myself stood at the back of the room, and I had 2 pieces of gum in my pocket, one for her and one for me. And I said, put this in your mouth and don't say anything, right? And was it hard to hear everything they said? Sure, right? But we took that list, and the guiding coalition took it, and there were some things we couldn't do anything about, right? Lesson plans are still going to be due. Like, that's not going away, right? But there were some things that we could budge on. And that helped us kind of get through some of those hurdles. One thing that we have since done that's kind of more proactive, and we started that this year, and it's called the SOAP meeting. And SOAP stands for Solution Over All Problems. So anyone can call a SOAP meeting. We just do them after school. Anybody that wants to stay can stay. We've only had a couple this year, but we basically just go through, if there's anybody that has a problem with something going on, and it could be anything from bus lineup to, it could be a wide range of things. They can bring the problem, but then they also have to kind of brainstorm a possible solution. So that way it's not like a gripe session, but it is productive. And then the other people that attend that meeting also come up with possible solutions. And it's really been beneficial. And there's been some things that have come up that I didn't even know was an issue, right? So like one minor thing that they brought was that the phone in the lounge didn't work. Okay, right? I don't use the phone in the lounge, so I didn't know that, right? So I said, well, we just have to put in a work order for that. Like, that's not hard, right? So there's plenty of things that they're going to bring up that you're like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that does need to be addressed. So those are just a couple of things we do. There's some other things we do as well, but those are some quick ones I wanted to share about resistance and anything. Oh, good. Yes, we are recording it. Anything that's coming up. Okay. So change moves at the speed of trust. So it takes time, even if you think about just personal relationships, it takes time for people to get to know you and trust you. So don't think you can come in here and just like trailblaze ahead and get a lot accomplished. Now, I want to share this. So I went through the 3 years of master principal with Arkansas Leadership Academy, and the railroad model, if you're not familiar with it, it is a huge tool in how to make sure that all things are really going well at your school and that you're addressing different things. So the 2 railroad tracks, one side is results. So you can think about that with all your data and anything you're doing to get results for kids at your school. The other side is relationships. So if you are not running both of those sides of the track, your train is going to run off the tracks. Okay. And this is really great for me because I am very data driven and very logical, sequential, math nerd. That's me. Okay. So I have to kind of have this in front of me to remind myself about relationships because when I'm in work mode, I just don't think about it. And I've had to be honest with my staff so they know. But I have to remind myself, Ask her about how things are going at home. Ask her about her kid that just went to college. Like, I'm having to like kind of prep myself in the morning, so I will be ready for conversations. And it sounds really weird, but it's just, that's how my brain is, right? So results in relationships, you got to have both. And then the middle is going to take care of itself if you have both of those pieces running. So you might have a closed off staff at the beginning, then they're going to open up a little bit more. They're going to begin to trust you, and then they're going to believe in the process and in the work that you're trying to do to get to that shared vision. So I wanted to share that with y'all if y'all hadn't seen that before. It's just a great little visual. Oh, I saw Miss Job's comment. Yeah, it does help people to, if they get to share and they realize that you want to know, right, what their struggles are. Absolutely. Okay, so guiding coalition is not something I build a lot of slides on, but if you do not have a leadership team or guiding coalition, you needed one like yesterday, right? Because they will for sure keep all the things rolling that you're trying to accomplish for the school. And it's just good to empower other leaders and make sure that they're all, you know, kind of moving in the same direction. They have a lot of influence over people that you may not have influence over as the principal. So it just helps you out a whole lot. And they love it, actually. They love to have some leadership opportunities. All right, so we do have about 8 minutes left. So I do want to just kind of show you a couple of celebrations. We celebrate everything here at Eastside, like you name it, we celebrate it. And it's just, that's part of our culture. We love photo booths. So if ever there was an event, we're going to have a photo booth. Like Dr. Seuss, we're doing Dr. Seuss stuff on Friday. So we have 2 photo booths. They're already ready and put up, and because we got to have them. It's just part of what we do, right? So these are just, and I know all of y'all celebrate in different ways. So these are just examples that we do at Eastside. We have the little signs that go in kids' yards. An Eastside Dream Builder lives here. And so the kids get these K through 5 for showing different things on our Pride Matrix, which it's perseverance, respect, all the PBIS stuff. So kids are selected by their teachers, and they get to have a little award ceremony. We do lots of, this is a Disney theme for this year. We were Disney last year. We hung on to it. It was so fun. So this is, we made little Disney waffles. You can get that little Disney waffle maker on Amazon for super cheap. And then they made like a little buffet, like they kind of did their toppings and stuff like that. So they loved that. And then we pass around awards every week for teachers. So we have the Soul Award, which we read the Soul book by Tim Kaine this summer. And then the Soul movie, that's a Disney movie, the little character, Mr. Joe, that's what Miss Dather is holding up there. So they get to keep Mr. Joe for the week. And then they get to decide who to pass it on to for next week for showing Soul in the building. So that's all led by staff. That's not anything, you know, that me as the principal decides who gets the Soul Award every week. And then we have a team award. And we didn't used to have that, but after the first year of going through PLC process, we started to realize, wow, we got to celebrate teams, right? So this is Living the Dream Team is the name of the award. And those are passed on to each team by the team that won it the week before. So that's nothing that me as the principal, I don't pick who the dream team is each week. And then we make sure that custodial staff gets that, cafeteria staff, all the different teams that you can think of, they all can get that award. So there's a few. And then, so if you don't have good social media, you're missing out. Like, you're missing out. So one thing is with COVID, your community's got to know what you're doing, and not just, you know, we have a PTO meeting, right? But like, what is going on in those classrooms? The parents want to see their kids and what they're learning. And then we make sure to shout out about what we're doing in team meetings, because all of that process is so important, and parents need to know that we collaborate, like we're meeting together to make sure your kid gets the best instruction they can. And then just individual kid celebrations. So this one here is about a little kindergartner that wrote about football, and he was so proud of himself. He did it all by himself. We loved the way he spelled tackle. Thought it was so great. Because it's, you know, he was sounding it out. Okay, so it was good. And then we do a lot of what we call hooks at Eastside. So this is our first grade team. They do The Wizard of Oz. They read that extended text. And so they have a hook at the very beginning, and the kids sit down both sides of the little yellow brick road that they make there in the hallway. And so they act it out. And the one in the line costume, Miss Spellerberg, she is very animated. She really missed her calling on Broadway because she's amazing. So the kids love this. Anytime you can create some kind of hook, it really gets the kids excited. And then to put all that on social media, it tells the families out there, your kids are getting the best, right? Like, we're giving it all we've got. And we have parents all the time that says, we feel like we're there, right? And that's what we want it to feel like. So the other piece to the social media, teachers need to be bragged on, right? And a lot of your younger teachers, they love social media, right? So if you're posting your teachers on there, then their families might share it to their page. So that just does a lot for them to validate their work, because they put a lot of work into it. Okay, so we're to the bonus feature, guys. We made it through the whole thing. Great. So this is, it looks very basic and you're like, why are you showing me a spreadsheet? Okay, but here's the deal. Now, I may be the only principal in the world that had this problem, but for 4 years, I was battled with, and I don't even have them to show y'all because they're not here because we use this now, but I was battled with Post-it notes. And everybody would stick a Post-it note on my door that says, return this call, right? Or they would be in my seat because they wanted to make sure I saw them, or they would be on my screen, right? So at the end of the day, because I'm hardly ever in my office, okay, because I'm out doing all the things, at the end of the day, I had all these Post-it notes. So then I would have to stay after, return all these phone calls. It was a nightmare. And for 4 years, I thought there's got to be a better system, but I never had a chance to like wrap my brain around it. So I created this spreadsheet this summer, and anyone that answers phones is trained in how to use the spreadsheet. It's pretty basic. Okay. And you can see the tabs at the bottom. We do one new one for each month. And then they basically just put all that information on there. Every time they add a name to this, they share it back with me and our assistant principal, because it could be for her or for me. And then when we actually call them back, we highlight it in green. Okay. And then it also is a great tracking tool to keep up with how many times we're having this conversation with this parent. It has been life-changing. And you know, small things make a huge difference, but never do I have Post-it notes this year. And then I know if I'm out in the building working on stuff and I get this, I can hop back in my office and call that parent back. So that's not waiting to be done at the end of the day. So anyway, so that was the bonus feature. I hope y'all are glad you stayed around for it. And y'all feel free to put anything in the chat if you have any questions or comments. I do know we will have another session, and some of the things kind of on my radar to talk about. I do a lot with the new hires, how to kind of equip them. We call them new kids on the block. So I can present on that for sure. A lot about toxic versus positive culture, and then a lot more on how the Guiding Coalition leads really all the initiatives going on. So love-hate relationship with Post-its. Yes, Leslie, I feel you. Absolutely. Okay. All right, Miss Job, I think that is everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Mandy, for leading our session. Please check the community PD calendar. I put the link in the chat. We will be getting the future sessions up, and I believe they're going to be monthly here in the very near future. So thank you so much for joining us, and y'all have a great afternoon.
Bye.